The following podcast is sponsored by Structure Tech.
My name is Joe. I am the owner of Drain Busters, Drain Cleaning, and Sewer Inspecting. I've been in the business since 1996, legally, 1988 child labor law. I'm a second generation guy. My father was the original Drain Busters.
Welcome, everybody. You're listening to Structure Talk, a Structure Tech presentation. My name is Bill Ulrich, alongside Tessa Murray and Ruben Saltzman. As always, your three-legged stool. Thanks for joining us today. On today's episode, we've got a guest who's been doing business with us at Structure Tech for, the last 5.5 years, something like that. We'll dig into that in a second, but first let me introduce Sewer Joe, the owner of Drain Busters, which is a sewer inspection company and drain cleaning company here in the Twin Cities. On the episode today, we're going to dig into Joe's mind and his experience and talk a little bit about sewer inspections, how important they can be at the time of sale. There's a big number that's attached to sewer lines. Typically, if something goes wrong, you don't want to read that report because the repairs can be very costly. Let's back up just a second and introduce Joe. Joe, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are, where people can find you. Let's get going with this sewer talk.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm a longtime listener. I've heard every single podcast from the very first one. I'm delighted to be on here. I just heard the Bardis episode not that long ago. My name is Joe. I am the owner of Drain Busters, Drain Cleaning, and Sewer Inspecting. I've been in the business since 1996, legally, 1988 child labor law. I'm a second generation guy. My father was the original Drain Busters. At our company, we specialize in drain cleaning and maintenance of drains, unclogging of drains, and in the last 5 years, really emphasized sewer inspecting, part of real estate work, inspecting sewer systems to educate. We don't just show up and shove a camera down somebody's pipe. We will teach you and educate you what your pipe is, the materials, when to maintain it, how the current condition looks, and tips and tricks to get people to move forward with a comfortable sewer system where they're walking in and not just experiencing a sewer backup 3 months after they buy the house and saying, I don't know what to do.
Cool. So how long has it been that you've been working side by side with Structure Tech, Joe?
I would say I would agree with your sentiment. It's got to be close to 5 years now. I still remember the original meeting I had with Structure Tech, meeting Ruben in his office. Geez, I had a big burly beard and, long hair, and I'm shocked Ruben decided, hey, I like Joe. It must have been the words because I didn't look like a very pretty guy back in those days. I was pretty rough and grim. But no, it's been a great experience working with Structure Tech. I mean, just meeting, getting to know everybody. When I first started partnering with Ruben, Tessa was in training.
Yeah, I remember. I think we started at the same time, you and I, Joe, or maybe you were brought in a little bit earlier than I was. Yeah,
I think you were there. You and Matt were both in training.
Matt came on a little bit after me, but yeah, right, kind of around the same time, pretty close.
Yeah, can't say I'll ever forget that one inspection I showed up with where there was the big pit in the backyard where you almost remember during the winter time. I found you and you were just almost terrified that you were going to fall into this big random pit in the backyard.
Yeah, you warned me about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Joe, I want to comment on one thing you said. You were talking about, I was kind of rough around the edges. I've never met a single person who's crossed your path who doesn't absolutely love Joe. I mean, people are like, I get such great information from Joe. It's not even funny. And I didn't even know there was so much to know about sewer drains, but my God, he is like the best person to talk to about this type of work. So
he's the number one guy in the number two business.
That's
right,
awesome.
Joe?
Yeah. You guys have all heard my one-liners walking into houses, and it's probably my favorite one-liners walking in and saying, hi, how you doing? I'm Joe. I'm here to do your Holmes colonoscopy. And the second I say that, 85% of the people will usually either snicker or laugh a little because it's true. That's what we're doing.
That's awesome. That's a new one that you have not used in my presence, Joe.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Good material. And, part of the reason, Bill, that everybody loves Joe, I mean, they love him on first sight, but Joe has an uncanny ability to remember every detail about people. we've talked about this internally at the team. I mean, Joe will meet somebody the first time and he'll get this detail from him and he'll see him again 3 months later and he'll say, yeah, so how's your dog Fluffy's broken leg? I mean, or whatever it is. It's like, I try to do stuff like that myself, but I do it by writing notes about people. But Joe just, it's in there. It's a steel trap. How do you do it, Joe?
It's not just people. It's like every sewer you've ever inspected, Joe. Like if anyone wants to know details about their specific geographical location, you can probably tell them without even having to do a sewer inspection.
You know, and I attribute that to being a kid who was stuck working with dad. You know, doing my trade is just embedded into my head, that the relationships you build with customers. I mean, it's actually kind of funny. I just had a 90-year-old lady give me her entire receipt collection because she's going to be put into a nursing home soon, where we were advertising we would clean her sewer for $34.95.
Oh my goodness.
I think just, you know, building that relationship, my dad really instilled in me, you know, make it personable, you know, get to know the people. And when I can make somebody choke up a little bit just on that tearful moment, it's crazy, the steel trap memory. The very first time I ever met Ruben on a job site, it was actually Ruben, and I believe George was inspecting the house. Sewer cleanout access was inside of a little unfinished closet. And I remember doing the inspection with a really poor camera quality compared to what I'm using now. It was a decent camera back in those days, but now we definitely use high-end stuff.
You've got a good memory. I remember that one. I remember George and I were chatting for a little while afterward, and we're kind of like, yeah, so is this going to be the guy? Like, do we partner? What do we do? We're like, yeah, I think he knows what he's doing. You know, he's got the right background. You know, the camera. I think we could get past that. We could convince him to upgrade someday.
Yeah.
And it didn't take you long. It took like a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Before
it wasn't long. The first one I remember, we were doing SD cards. We'd have to record it onto an SD card.
Joe, I remember you used to take your cell phone and you'd take pictures of your camera because your camera didn't have recording ability.
Didn't even have it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
What percentage of drain lines, main lines out of a house that you encounter actually are in good shape in the city? We're talking about the inside Minneapolis and Saint Paul, you know, where the housing stock is, to be frank, the oldest that we have in our area.
Yeah. So if we're talking, you know, 80-plus-year-old home, Minneapolis, Saint Paul area, I mean, we're seeing 30% of the homes are still in decent shape. We're not someone who calls out and says, oh, this needs to be replaced, that needs to be changed out. We need to see the facts to know that it's there. I'm not going to call a pipe bad because it's old. We have to see definitive signs, either in cracked pipe material, bad joint connections, pitching and grading sags where we're seeing pipes go underneath water. That's the great thing, is I've been yelled at by sellers saying, you know, you're costing me thousands of dollars. And I said, well, sir, did you watch the video? I'm not going to call anything out that I don't have high definition footage to prove that why I'm calling this out. So we are seeing about 30% of homes that are showing signs that they're still in good shape. They never saw tree root intrusion. The pitching looks good. And it's all conditional on how that pipe aged to the yard and the people that maintained it moving in the past.
So what about the other 70%, Joe? Like, do they need to be replaced or dug up or what?
You know, so calling out things. So we may call a pipe out for, you know, having issues, cracks, deterioration, offset fitting connections. Every case is a case by case basis. So we may call something out, and then our job is to recommend that you have a consultation with an excavation company. I'm not going to show up on a real estate sewer inspection and say, you have to replace all this pipe. That's not my job. My job is to educate and warn potential buyers of risky factors and say, you know, have this consultation with a sewer excavation company or have this consultation with a pipelining company. We're a little stricter on a real estate inspection than we are with a current homeowner. You know, if there's a crack on the top of a sewer pipe that isn't in the path of the water, when I'm working with just a homeowner who's not selling their house, I will warn them, hey, this is not something we want to see. But if it's part of a real estate deal, I'm going to be encouraging that they look at bringing in a pipelining company for a consultation. Kind of to elaborate more on that, I mean, when I'm working with a homeowner, I'm going to let them know, hey, this is something we don't want to see. This is a risk that your pipe is showing signs of damage. You will have to address this. Real estate deal, it's kind of like selling a car. You know, What's the sewer? The sewer is the transmission of the house. If you got a slipping transmission, obviously, you want to have that looked at if you're selling a brand new car.
Joe, on average, what would you say like the estimated cost is for these sewer lines that need repair?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm not a guy who does it. I'm not digging in sewers, and I think that's what's given me credibility as an inspector. Is I'm not the guy who's giving the estimates on site or giving people the impression. I'm the unbiased guy because I have no vested interest in the next step. I get paid the same whether that pipe needs total pipe replacement or whether it just needs a maintenance drain clean. The average cost, what I hear is from talking to dig excavation companies, talking to pipelining companies, and talking to realtors who give me the feedback after they've had to get repair work done. I'll even look at estimates for some clients and say, yeah, that looks like a fair price. So let's break it down. Sewer dig replacement. Most digs from general ranges, what you could be looking at is $3,000 to $5,000 will fix about a 4 to 6 foot chunk of the pipe in ground, no tree in the way, no obstruction that they have to work with. Easy dig. 3 to 5 grand gets you, 6 to 8 feet worth of pipe, maybe. Pipelining is a different story. That is priced based on linear footage. Most of the, I would say, guys who specialize in pipelining, it's $100 a linear foot. As long as a camera can get through the system, they'll pretty much tell you that a pipelining sleeve can be installed. 63-foot pipe, $6,300. Dig excavation streetwise. That's the really important aspect of inspecting a sewer, especially in these older neighborhoods, because when you have to excavate the street, you're talking higher cost. You have to pay for the street replacement. Generally, however foot deep it is, it's about $1,000 per foot deep to dig in the street. Some of those repairs can start in the $8,000 to $12,000 range to dig up the last 2 feet of pipe.
Wow. Yeah, that's something I would want to know if I was buying a house.
Yeah.
So, little story, a friend of mine who lives in Saint Paul, he got a letter in the mail because Saint Paul was inspecting pipe connections through a main, and they found a disconnection where his main line was attaching to the main, and they sent a letter and said, you got to address this. You can do it or we'll do it, but somebody's going to address it. And they tipped him off. Usually, Joe, you're tipping somebody off, and it starts at the homeowner's side. But in this case, it was the city who did it to him. Have you heard of that happening before?
Yeah, so a lot of municipal cities, Saint Paul, Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, Edina, Richfield, Bloomington, every city maintains their pipes. Years ago, they didn't maintain them very well. People would have to install those great big giant twist valves to shut the sewer off if the city sewer backed up. Now these companies will be water jetting their sewers, inspecting their pipes. St. Paul recently did a major pipelining sleeve project on their own city sewer. If the city feels comfortable, I think that should push a lot of buyers to know that it's not a Band-Aid solution when the city's doing it as well. But to get back on point, I mean, the city will send out a letter and say, while observing our own pipe, we indicated some pipe damage on yours. We would recommend you get this taken care of. And now cities are even, especially inner city, are starting to offer programs to help people update this aging infrastructure. St. Paul has a sewer assessment program where they have actually allowed people to do sewer repairs with not a ton of money out of pocket on a loan through their property taxes stretched out over a number of years. So when you're talking a 15 or let's just say average dig, $7,000 dig, they can space that out over 20 years worth of property taxes with around $300 to $600 out of pocket. And as long as your house has not had delinquent property taxes, you're automatically approved for this program.
Just one more reason to live in the great city of St. Paul.
Right?
I advocate for it on a regular basis.
You know what I would like even more than that, Bill? I'd like it if my city sewer didn't need to be replaced. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are words from a man who lives in a suburb where the infrastructure is 14 months old. He will eventually continue to move farther away, so his infrastructure is always new, or he will enjoy what I enjoy, which is repairs.
No, I kid. Bill, I just had that done where my whole street was repaved, and you can bet that was a big bill. All the homeowners got that. Yeah, I am not living in a 14-month-old development. Yeah.
Pretty close, though.
Closer than you. Well, I'll give you that. Closer than you. So, Joe, we talked a little bit about where you started out. I realized we didn't really talk much about where you are today with things. At the time that we started partnering up together, we were the first home inspection company that you really partnered with, right?
Oh, exactly. And, when we first met, I was 99.5% strictly doing drain cleaning. We'd bring a camera out to find out why we would struggle to get through a drain system, to find out why our full-size blade won't get through when we have to run a smaller blade, or to try to help a homeowner understand, why am I cleaning my sewer every 6 months when my neighbor can go 4 years? Some neighbors never have problems. So now, flip the script. Now we're at the point where I would say that the base of my work is almost 65% of my work is now sewer inspecting. It's been absolutely amazing to see that it's really been a sticking point in real estate to have a sewer line check. I like to joke, but I'm being dead serious that I tell people, sewer inspecting is kind of in that same, we're just tailing end with where radon is. Radon's something everybody's starting basically to do on most homes. Sewer inspecting is tailing the same way. We've made the niche now where especially older homes and even newer homes, in my opinion, should have a sewer inspection. I feel that we're getting there, and more people are more knowledgeable, and it takes one bad experience to say, you know what, I'm going to be checking a lot more sewers.
No, that runs counter to what I had been telling people for a long time. And you finally changed my mind on that, Joe, because I used to tell people, you buy in an old house, get a sewer inspection. You buy in a newer house, less than 10 years old, don't waste your money on it. But you've convinced me otherwise, because I remember there was a time where every time you would run across a house less than 10 years old and you'd find a completely destroyed drain, you'd send me that video. And eventually I was just like, all right, Joe, I get it. You're right. They all need inspections. What are some of the things you found on new homes, like less than 10 years old? What goes wrong?
So the great thing about, let's talk about a home that's 3 years old or newer. Most builders have a warranty on these sewers. A lot of these guys install the sewers, they don't inspect them. They don't know they're hooking it up and assuming everything's gonna be great because it's brand new piping. So I just did one within the last 6 months where brand new build, nobody's ever lived in this house. It was eerie running the camera through because I can't really see staining marks where water runs. And at the very end of the sewer pipe, there was a massive sag and a hole in the pipe where rocks had filled inside the sewer on a home that nobody ever lived in. It was a manufacturer error.
Wow.
And errors are going to happen. People do make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And I would say 99.2% of the time, they're going to be great on a brand new build, but there's always that human error quotient where something could go wrong. And this was a project we had just recently seen where now I can recommend to somebody doing that inspection, hey, this drain should be under warranty from the builder and the builder's contractor. So now you're not negotiating a $10,000 repair. You're contacting that builder's contractor who installed the sewer, and it's going to get taken care of. It's probably an easier process than trying to negotiate digging over again. However, that can be hard to say. Newer homes, the things that we look at is, what kind of land was that house built on? Was it more of a softer land, a marshy land? Sewer pipes can have pitching issues. Plastic sewer pipes in particular is one of the lightest materials from a density standpoint and can be a higher proponent to have that sewer pipe start to bow and produce a dip. For instance, I'm in a 1983 built home in the city of Eagan. I did my own sewer inspection and I pushed the camera down. I had 10 straight feet of underwater pipe. And I recommended that my sewer line get replaced. The seller who sold me the house was shocked that I was calling out for a sewer to be repaired. And then he was even more shocked when I sent his agent the paid invoice that I actually fixed the sewer. And I'm not just trying to negotiate money. So we can see that on old homes, newer builds, brand new construction. You just don't know unless you look. And it pays to spend the money for around the cost of a emergency drain cleaning service call to know that you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Emergency really isn't the key to that, right? It's just plain bad. And can you fix bad? You have to repair bad. You can't just leave it alone, right? Like you're not going to push your camera through and unclog bad. It needs to be repaired, right?
Yeah. We're going to see a high proponent of things where drain systems are functioning, but really need to be repaired. And we do see people that, even though I recommend a repair, they don't take our advice. Eventually it's going to be bad. It just depends on how I word it on my report, that I want to protect my buyers and make sure that they're doing the necessary steps to get their pipe up to par so that it doesn't bite them in the rear end on the long term.
One of the things I used to talk to people about when it came to like chimneys, we'd talk and, I'm never going to use a chimney anyway, so I don't care what it's like. And I said, hey, that's great, but The chickens always come home to roost at some point. Now, at least if you know ahead of time what you're dealing with, you know what you're going to have to deal with later when you turn around and sell, because somebody might want to use that. And chimneys are way different than drains, obviously. But having the data is never a bad thing. And it's best to collect that data before you actually own the property.
I believe it or not, exactly what you said, Bill. We see it where I will tell people, my biggest concern here is resale value. You've got a line that is clearly defective or is showing concerns that, what happens if your job gets outsourced in 3 years and you need to turn around and resell? Now you're going to feel that on that end as well when you try to sell. It's a problem now. We recommend you have the proper consultation with the correct professional to get this corrected.
I have a follow-up question to the new construction.
Yeah.
A lot of these subdivisions are going into marginal property that's heavy soil, that holds a lot of water. And you see these properties being developed all year long. Is there any concern laying this pipe like in the wintertime? There isn't frost that you're laying the pipe in, but maybe some things freeze up and then thaw out. And is there shifting and moving around after that pipe is in the ground? Or is it pretty stable once it's in the ground?
You know what? That's a great point, because grounds are different during different times of seasons. Here in Minnesota, we have frozen ground value. I have a job that I serviced about 2.5 years ago with Structure Tech, where we found a new home that was about 2 years old, newer home in a lot that was surrounded by homes that were 85 years old. And within the first 2-year time frame, that line went 100% underwater just from sagging. And even the home inspector on site that day, he had cited that he could see it just in the foundation of the home itself had settled quite a bit in that first little bit there. So, it can easily be said that you're paying more for repairs in the wintertime because the ground is frozen. Same thing can be said about when it's installed into the ground. The changes when that soil softens a little bit in those warmer climate months that could make these drains have issues in new construction. So it's never a bad idea to inspect them.
I was going to ask Joe about just some crazy stories, but I don't know how we want to segue into that, because I remember there's a house I think it was in like on West 7th, Joe, that we were at, and you told me that the sewer line went straight down under the house, and then it was your camera went into this big cavern, and there was like no city sewer main that was visible, and you could not tell where the sewage was going. And that stuck with me. I was like, what does someone do in this situation when they're buying a house? What's the fix for that, And do you see that a lot?
Yeah. So we've got a certain type of a sewer system called a sand rock sewer.
Sand rock. Okay.
So sand rock sewers are known to be in the area around West 7th Street, leading from 35E all the way down to where the Xcel Energy Center is. And then, believe it or not, there's also sand rock sewer over by the private school that's right off the river, De La Salle High School. They are on sand rock sewer right there where that high school and the brothers wing is behind there. So what
in
a sand rock sewer? Yeah, in Minneapolis there as well.
Okay.
So sand rock sewers, they are sewers that were built in an area that has a very hard rock foundation. They're right by the river bluffs. So essentially it's like lime or very hard scale rock that it's not like soil. They can't just immediately put a sewer pipe straight in. They actually have to drill through a very hard top layer to get it down to a softer layer down below to be able to bring a horizontal pipe over. So some of these homes, my house, Egan, Minneapolis, Bloomington, sewer pipes are on average 8 to 12 feet deep. These pipes have to travel anywhere from 25 to as much as 55 feet straight down in some cases before it can even make a horizontal turn. And it's not soil. So when they drill, some people, I swear, would have to bring in oil drilling machines to bore the hole, and guys would have to lay in special sections of pipe set by set and set them into place. Very difficult to install because these things were so deep, and it's not a supportive foundation. It's a hard rock. So there's no support to that pipe. Eventually a pipe could get a crack in it, and the weight bearing pressure of not having the soil packed around that pipe can cause that pipe to literally just collapse, which is what we're finding in West 7th Street. There are homes where the sewer is no longer attached. The sewer's working, half the people don't know that their sewers are not attached. So when you're running water, it's draining outside the actual spectrum of the pipe itself, and it's draining down a rock cavern on the exterior of the pipe. It's not polluting anything. So therefore, people are not enforcing that it be dug up and replaced. When I see those on sewer inspection videos, I have to let the people know, hey, you've got a sandrock sewer that is disconnected. I'm not going to say it won't work, but I won't give you any sort of promises if I can't see what it's going into.
So what's the concern?
The biggest concern there is a sandrock sewer's got what's called a drift tunnel. Basically, that's the shaft that drops straight down. And then you hit your horizontal. At the bottom of that horizontal, there's usually a little bigger hole area there. When I'm inspecting some of these pipes, I see that everything is actually disconnected and there's chunks of broken pipe laying there. If it's dry, I'm assuming the water is getting through the rock barrier. I'm seeing somewhere literally it is a big swampy wet mess and I can't see anything. And I'm seeing signs that there's a restriction to that draining flow. Those are the ones that are the most high risk. Let's say, for instance, your sewer backs up. Traditional sewer, you call a drain cleaning company, we run a cutter blade, we follow that pipe right to the city sewer, we bore it all out and the drain works great. In a sandrock sewer, if that pipe is disconnected in any way, shape, or form, our cutter blade and our cable goes into a big giant hole. And we have no way to get it back into the pipe, and we have no way of unclogging that system. So now you've got a sewer that basically can't be maintained if it clogs. In that same regard, let's talk about sandrock sewers, where a sandrock sewer is a hardened rock. We're not seeing tree roots down. So we're not seeing roots growing into the pipe system to clog up the drain where you have to clean it. So in a lot of cases, some of those drains are very low maintenance. As long as people can avoid those products, they claim are flushable, sanitary products, female products, paper towels, dental floss. If they can keep those out of the drain system, they can keep that drain from clogging up. But is it right that it's technically your pipe's disconnected? It's not supposed to be that way.
What's your take on those flushable wipes, Joe?
I am not a fan. If you look underneath the bottom label of those packages, they usually have a little disclaimer on there that says one wipe at a time. And I think scientific studies will show that the people who are making these claims that they're flushable are saying on a brand new home with plastic pipes containing no rusting corrosion, have no tree roots. Sure, it might glide through the system. It has the ability to catch on maybe some of the joint connections, but overall flushable wipes need to be kept out of the system. I think they've overtaken the feminine napkin as the number one thing that we need to keep out of sewer systems.
Sure. Well, and I've heard a lot of municipalities complain about these things because it's not just your sewer line. They get into the municipality and I don't know what goes on after it leaves at my house, but there's some type of central plant where they take all this stuff and they filter all of the hard stuff that can't be treated. And I guess those flushable wipes just destroy their system.
Yeah, I've talked with people who actually, that's their job. I had a guy hire me to clean his sewer and he said, that's my job. There's random filter stations throughout the city that we have to go climb down in with shovels and we pull off wads of that stuff. Flushable wipes. We find drain guys' broken cutter blades, their broken cables. He goes, I have more cutter blades than you probably own at your company. And I said, I don't doubt it. These cutter blades are designed to actually break over long periods of time. That's how we can clean a sewer without breaking the pipe, is our blade is technically considered somewhat disposable. So
sure.
You know what that reminds me of? I saw an image of just a mass of those wipes in a sewer system. Have you seen images of like the floating trash islands in our oceans?
Yeah. Believe it or not, if you were to research on the internet and research the word fatbergs, FATBURGS, fatbergs, you'll actually pull up some of those stories of what people were pulling out of the sewers in the New York system and things like that when all these things coagulate together. They're called fatbergs.
Maybe you research this after you've eaten your lunch or dinner.
Exactly.
So I can imagine a point where a city sends a bill, you get your sewer bill, and then there's this assessment light item that says removal of flushable wipes. And they put it in bold and they make it very clear that there's an additional cost to getting rid of these kinds of things. And maybe after that type of education monetarily, people will begin to not want to use them.
Yeah. It was crazy during our toilet paper crisis. 2020, I was in the paper. I got interviewed by somebody at Star Tribune about the toilet paper crisis. People are having a hard time finding toilet paper and the resulting to flushable wipes. Well, I told them, first off, they're not flushable. If you are someone who you are addicted to using them because they're comfortable or provide you that sense of cleanability that you just don't get from toilet paper, maybe you need to invest in a diaper genie, something you can dispose of it sanitarily without putting it down your sewer system. So it is pretty crazy how that stuff works.
And you always educate your clients after you go out and you clear their drains, and then you kindly tell them what caused these problems, right?
We try to be nice. Me personally, that's what everybody tells me. I'm too nice of a guy, Joe. And I'm trying to not be that guy who says, like the truck picture you're showing, I told you not to flush that. I'll tell them,
Yes.
It would be in your best interest to consider keeping these types of products out. Or I'll explain to them, this is why we only give rental properties a 30-day warranty on your sewer cleaning versus a homeowner where it's 6 months.
So Joe, I bet you got some crazy stories. What's some of the craziest stuff you've ever found? And we'll try to keep it clean, as clean as we can, knowing that this is the topic. But what's some of the craziest stuff you've ever come across?
One of my favorite things as an inspector is when we get to see a rodent encounter. We have seen quite a few of those. I know you've seen a ton of those videos. You even posted on the Structure Tech site, best of sewer inspections, and showed quite a few of the mouse encounters that we've had. I've got a few new ones, which I need to send you. One of my guys just saw one the other day, and it was a great image of it. Those are always fun. Some of my favorite stories actually involve drain cleaning. So when I was probably 22 years old, working for Dad before my dad had passed away, I was called to an emergency service visit to a rental property in Columbia Heights. Toilet was clogged. It was the only toilet they had. My dad says, Joe, you go take it. So I went out and I showed up, and the landlord had the property owner had met me on site. He said, yeah, there's a toilet clog here. We need to figure out what's going on. It's their only toilet. And then this was probably 7 o'clock at night. I go into the bathroom, and sure enough, toilet is clogged. Run my toilet auger down, and there's this little boy watching me from the doorway. This little boy, he's really interested in what I'm doing, and he's not making a peep, just really looking at me around the corner. As I pull my toilet snake auger out of the toilet, a big giant hunk of ham comes out of the toilet, and this little kid starts bawling. The kid is crying. And I looked at the property owner. I said, well, I guess we don't have to assume who flushed that down the toilet. And the dad of the kid goes, we thought it was really odd he ate all of his ham because he never eats all the ham. Toilets usually provide some of the best stories. We've pulled credit cards out of people's toilets, cell phones out of toilets.
Oh my goodness.
I had a guy, and this was back in the first generation of Nextel phones that were waterproof, the big brick kind where they had the two-way paging through the phone. And this guy goes, I work for the power company, and I flush my phone down the toilet. I need to get that phone out. In order to get a new one from the company, I have to provide them with the phone. Well, how do you know the phone's still in there? And these things are waterproof. So he calls his phone, and you can hear it vibrating in the toilet. I was successful in getting that phone back for him, and he instantly put it in a Ziploc bag and said, I'm not touching this. I'm turning it back in so I can get a new phone. I'm done with this phone. I will not sanitize this.
Oh, that is fantastic.
So hear a phone vibrating in the toilet that was an interesting scenario.
I'll be honest, I don't understand how half of what's in a toilet actually goes through that pipe and disappears.
Yeah.
I mean, forget the extra stuff you put in there, just the normal stuff.
Just the normal. And how you can get some of that stuff through there. Last goofy toilet story here. A home in Richfield had hired me, and I'm talking with him on the phone. And he goes, well, my toilet's clogged and I know what's in there. And I'm like, okay, what do you have going on? He goes, well, my wife had gotten an upset stomach and she lost her dentures down there. And those were really expensive dentures that I had to pay out of pocket for. I need to be able to salvage those dentures. And I said, well, why don't we just take a hammer to the toilet and we can physically remove them? Well, here's the deal. I just put on one of those power assist toilets. It was about a $1,200 toilet. I don't want to do it. I said, all right, well, what I could do is I could remove the toilet from the floor, carry it outside, flip it upside down. I'll run a reverse spin on my toilet auger so that it doesn't drill into the denture plate, and we'll push it out the hole it came in. Sure enough, I pushed that thing out, and it was very covered in number 2.
Oh my goodness.
The guy says, my wife is going to have to boil these and reuse. And I had said, really? There's no warranty? There's nothing you could do? Nope, there's nothing I can do. I paid out of pocket for these. So the next time I had to go service their sewer line to remove tree roots, and I happened to see his wife, I thought, well, you've heard of the term a blank eating grin.
Oh, no.
I thought that is what they call that. I could not look at the lady the same again. She had that grin, and I'm like, dedication.
I got news for you. Her husband couldn't either. And the relationship took a very bad turn.
Yeah.
It's a little like The Help, if you've seen the movie The Help.
From a sewer inspection side, stories actually involves Ruben's dad. We did a sewer inspection in the border of Hopkins and Edina, where we found no sewer pipe left under the road with cracks in the street. There was a massive void underneath the street because the sewer had broken with a sewer that does a drop down connection, and all the dirt had been falling down the city sewer and just rinsing away, and it produced a large, gigantic void. We must have been very close to a major sinkhole on this street. And it happened to be a street that there was many different cul-de-sacs that came off of it, and it was only a one-way in, one-way out type of street. After we had performed the inspection, I had told the realtor, you might want to go down to City Hall and let them know about this. Here's a flash drive of the sewer recording. Within 2 hours of doing that inspection, the city condemned the road. Wouldn't let anybody leave that area. Anyone who was on there, their cars were stuck there until that homeowner dug up that sewer pipe, and they replaced all the dirt that had lost down the city sewer.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
awesome that they did that sewer inspection, because it would have avoided a major sinkhole.
Wow. That's
Nice
crazy.
find.
Yeah.
Didn't you have one, Joe, where you found a similar thing, and the agent that was representing the buyer ran out to move his car after
That's
you
the
found
one.
it? That's the one.
Yep. Ran out, moved his car, and he was parked right in front. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't park it.
Yeah. My gosh.
So he had to go move his car.
Joe, I've got to ask you before, because we've been talking about sewers for a long time. I just want to make sure we touch on materials. Can you kind of run through what types of materials you see and where you rate them in terms of good, bad, the ugly?
Yeah. So, and a lot of this, I get asked by a lot of realtors, what are the do's and don'ts of wanting to do a sewer inspection? And just on experience from inspecting all these pipes, clay tile and cast iron are the most common materials seen in older pipe systems. If a home was built before 1959, chances are it has cast iron and clay tile.
And maybe a combination of both?
It may be a combination of both. We see checkerboard sewers where there's 10 feet of cast iron, then it goes into clay tile, back to cast iron, back to clay tile. I think guys got paid by the amount of pipe they laid. I really don't know. But in the genre after 1959, we're going to start seeing materials that are concrete. We will see materials that are very bad, which is Orangeburg. And then right around 1981, but more definitively 1985 was when plastic really started to come into play. Starting it off, best type of pipe material that we're going to see least numbers of tree roots, broken sewers, things like that, plastic. Plastic has a higher propensity for sagging, so there's certainly risk factor with plastic alone. The worst type of pipe is Orangeburg. Orangeburg is a pipe material that was scattered throughout random areas during a wartime era. That's why they came up with this alternative pipe method. It's a pipe that's literally made of pitch pressed wood, so essentially sheets of paper slathered in tar. Sheet of paper slathered in tar, sheet of paper slathered in tar till it's about 20 layers thick. They would form it into a form of a pipe. Those types of pipes were estimated to be a 50-year pipe in the best of scenarios, and even the Wikipedia information you will find on Orangeburg piping under the usage tab will tell you that they were known to fail in as early as 10 years. Those were homes 1965, early 60s to the mid 60s range that we've seen in the city of Richfield. We've seen in St. Louis Park, Crystal, North St. Paul. Inner cities, Minneapolis, Saint Paul, very rare, if almost impossible to see it. I've seen Orangeburg out in Shakopee, out in Prior Lake. That's the type of pipe material that usually, if I see it, I always recommend that they have a consultation with the city to determine if that pipe has to. Some cities will push that pipe is removed. Some cities will say, we don't want that pipe in our ground, but we're not going to force you to dig it up. That's a type of pipe material that's very bad. So ranking, in my opinion, best to worst. Plastic, for its low maintenance purposes, you really don't have to clean, especially anything after 1995. Very low maintenance type of pipe. Clay tile is my second favorite pipe because it's proven to last a long time under good maintenance and under good conditions. Cast iron would be next. Cast iron, strengths of it is its durability. It's the strongest density material. Its negative aspect is it's a very porous surface wall pipe. And then you look at things like concrete. Concrete's a good pipe, but does allow tree roots, and it does deteriorate at its joint connections. It's very common to see some deterioration factor at the joint fittings, just like how concrete driveways kind of deteriorate around edgings. It's more susceptible there. And then obviously I hate Orangeburg.
I've got an Orangeburg story. We had Orangeburg at our cabin. So up north on Rainy Lake, they put in a municipal sewer system that included drilling through rocks. And I think they used Orangeburg because it was a little more forgiving of maybe being able to bend it if they needed to. I don't know exactly why they did it. I'm just hypothesizing. I'm coming up with my own reasons why. Anyway, the whole system was made of Orangeburg. And underneath the bathroom, which was in a crawl space, which you couldn't get to, there developed a sag in the Orangeburg, which kept sagging. And then the more water it held, the more it sagged. And then eventually it just fell out of its joint connections because they're kind of just pressed together. And there was a mess. Thankfully, it's all gone. The cabin, all that pipe is gone. And I'm going to go with something better and more durable. But it was one of those, hey, can we use this toilet? And it's like,
Orangeburg piping is compared, when I've talked to digging actual sewer excavators, they tell me that when they dig that stuff up, when it fails, it's comparable to wet cardboard. Ugh. So it's a very bad type of pipe material when it goes bad.
Yeah, I can vouch for their comments. These kinds of things are never glamorous, but they kind of make or break your Christmas holiday when you have 35 people coming to your house and the water's not flowing out the way it's supposed to.
Sewers don't back up on Tuesday afternoon. They just don't. When you have nothing going on that night, they're backing up on Friday night, Saturday night, when company's coming at the most inconvenient time. They do it on purpose. Tree roots have a mind of their own, I think.
Yep.
Joe, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to contact you?
So, we're still somewhat old school. We love phone calls. Our business number is 952-925-9583. Or we do have a website now where you can actually book online appointments through our website is www.mndrainbusters.com. So www.mndrainbusters.com. There are many other drain busters and none of us are affiliated. We are not a franchise. If you just went to drainbusters.com, you might find a guy in Pennsylvania or maybe even in California, but we are the only drain busters in the state.
Yeah, you guys think about putting together like a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group just to sort of keep in touch with the commonality of a name and obviously a business?
I've talked to a couple of the other guys at Drain Busters, but we, just random. I tried to see if I could buy out drainbusters.com and that guy was like, no, I'm good. I'll keep it. Like, okay, it is what it is. So, but just generally, I am part of a Facebook group where it's plumbers and drain guys, and we all talk about weird things in our trade. The people give each other a really hard time. I can't name drop them because they're very vulgar on their times, but there is some legit real-time talk between plumbers, drain cleaners throughout all of the United States and Canada as well. We have people from Canada and a few members from Australia who are in our Facebook group.
Very cool. Very cool. The best part about life seems to be the communities you live in. It's good to see that you have connections. Well, everybody, I think that's going to be a wrap for today's episode. As you can see, the main line coming out of your house is a fairly important piece of your whole functionality, shall we say. So if you ever have any concerns, I'm sure Joe would be happy to bring out his equipment and give you, as you say, give your house a colonoscopy. Thank you, Joe. We really appreciate your time today. And thank you, everybody, for listening. You've been listening to Structure Talk, a Structure Tech presentation. My name is Bill Ulrich, alongside Tessa Murray and Ruben Saltzman. Catch you next time.
For more information on how we can provide you with the right information about your home before you buy or sell, contact us at structuretech.com.